व्हाट्स अप गाइज, वेलकम बैक टू द चैनल। आप सबका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है कोड ब्लडेड में। एंड सो दिस इज द थर्ड पार्ट इन द स्ट्रक्चर प्लेलिस्ट of C. Basically, in the previous two videos, I have already discussed about the concept of structures, like why we need structures, all that, and even I have discussed about the initialization part, like how we can declare a variable to be a structure, और जो भी data types, जो भी structures members है, like the member inside a structure block, वो भी मैंने पिछले वीडियो में डिस्कस किया. So in this particular video, we will focus on how we can put the values inside those data set of members. Alright, how we can retrieve those values, and even we'll see how the memory of the structure are basically allocated in our RAM. So वो इस वीडियो का मेन टॉपिक होने वाला है. ठीक है, आप लोग अभी तक सब्सक्राइब नहीं किए हो तो जल्दी से कर दो सब्सक्राइब चैनल को, और लाइक शेयर कमेंट. ऑफ कोर्स इफ़ यू डू हैव एनी काइंड ऑफ डाउट्स क्वेरीज कमेंट सेक्शन में ज़रूर बताइएगा, तो आई विल बी मोर देन हैप्पी टू क्लियर इट आउट. ऑलराइट, अपना स्ट्रक्चर प्लेलिस्ट और भी कंटिन्यू होगा, विल बी पार्ट 4 पार्ट 5. ऑलराइट, सो आई एम बेसिकली ब्रेकिंग द एंटायर लाइक द टॉपिक इनटू सेगमेंट्स, बेसिकली आप बोल सकते हो, ताकि आप लोगों को समझने में बहुत आसानी हो. यू डू नॉट हैव टू लाइक सिट बैक फॉर 1 hour फॉर एंटायर लॉन्ग वीडियो. सो दैट्स माई मेन फोकस बेसिकली. तो चलो स्टार्ट करते हैं आज का वीडियो. So guys, let's get started. So today we'll cover up two topics. One is how actually the memory is allocated in case when we declare structures, and one more thing is that how can we access various elements and put in values. So we'll take up that thing. So let's start. Alright, so it's memory allocation of structures. So if you have synced up with my previous videos, I have already explained there how to declare a structure, what is the syntax of declaring your own user defined data type basically. And so like now the main thing is how is the memory allocated and how can we access or put values inside that. So we'll focus on that part. So let me just define a structure. Alright, so let's suppose fine. And as you know, like while defining a structure, alright, this is just the data type. Alright, in order to allocate memory, basically we need to declare a variable, and what is basically whatever the memory that will get allocated here is will be a static memory. And what do I mean by static memory is that like it is like there are two different kinds of memory allocation which we can perform in C. One is static memory allocation and one is dynamic memory allocation. So basically static memory allocation means you have a fixed block of memory, like throughout the program your memory size which you will declare basically will not change. And so whenever you create any kind of variable, for example suppose if you write int of a, alright, so basically your container like a box is created with the variable name a, and how much size does this box occupy, that is the size of int basically. So if you have a 16-bit compiler, alright, so depending upon the compiler type also, the number of bytes or the number of basically the space that any kind of data type occupy in your system also depends. Alright, so if you have a 16-bit compiler, then the size that integer basically takes up will be your 2 bytes of space. Alright, and if you use 32-bit, so it will take up 4 bytes. So this is just a thing that like whenever we declare any kind of thing, any kind of a variable, the memory space that this container takes up in a RAM basically is static, which means this integer will throughout the execution of the program that we have written will always occupy 2 bytes. It will not occupy 1 bit more or 1 bit less. So do keep this in mind as I will sync up this thing here also. Just a second. So we need to declare a variable here. So This is while in my previous video I have already told that you can mention the variable name here also, like, or after writing this part you can again write struct info s, then put the semicolon. So both of the like syntax you can follow. And so basically I'm writing this like I'm declaring the variable. Why I have to declare the variable? Because I have to allocate memory basically. So how is the memory allocated? Let's go to that part. Fine, so this will be your memory block. And as you can see, like in my previous videos I had already told, whatever the diagram that I had created in my previous video, that was only for the concept purposes, as I had told you. So here, as you can see, this is how the memory will be allocated. Fine, so let's assume the base address of this is suppose 2000, and I am assuming that my compiler is 16-bit compiler. All right, so 16-bit compiler, basically integer, this marks. What does this mean? This is a box. Marks is the variable name, and what is the type of this particular thing? It is int, which means integer value can be stored here. And we know if our compiler is of 16-bit, integer occupies basically 2 bytes of space. So the base address of this particular box again will be 2 bytes, which means 2002. And again see, basically name is again this is a character array basically. And what character array also means, you can declare a string basically. So name can hold a sequence of characters, and you know sequence of characters are also known as string. So this is the base address. All right, so 25 bytes, because in case of 16-bit compiler, character occupies 25 bytes. So if you like 25, if you add it, so it will be 2027. This is the base address of this particular thing. All right, so do note about it. And like I think it will be 2003. All right, because 2002 will indicate 2 bytes, so that will be encapsulated by this particular. So it will start from 2003 and it will go till 2028. That will indicate basically 25 bytes. And so the base address of this one will start from, yep. So I guess this is how it works. All right, in total if you see, uh, no, I guess it is like, because it is 2002 only, 2000 like, so if you need 25 basically, so it will be 2028. All right, so just sync up with that. And so this is the base address. Just not focus on this part, focus on this, how the memory is being allocated basically. So like integer has 2 bytes, all right, character 1 byte, but since it is a character array, which means the total bytes will be 25. All right, and we know float occupies 4 bytes in case of 16-bit compiler, so it will be your 31 bytes. So in total, all right, this will be a 31 bytes. So in total this will get 31 bytes of memory. All right, and like now you will question me, like previously you saw that particular parent super block, which under which these 3 blocks were present. All right, so you can consider this to be the variable name s. And one more important thing, if you have not gone through my pointer playlist and you do not know what pointers are in C, alright, you will definitely find it in my channel, because here basically what happens, the variable name s which we have declared, it is of structure type, or specifically you can say info type. What do I mean by info type? Because the data type, it is a user defined data type like int, float. All right, we have also given this data type according to our choice, info. All right, so you can say s is a variable of info type, and we in turn know that info type means it is declared with the help of structure. All right, so s basically works as an internal pointer. And what do I mean by internal pointer? Basically, which means s in itself as a variable. stores the base address of this particular memory block. All right, which means it will store 2000 and it will basically point to the here. All right, so like now you can ask that why 2000. Just take this concept. All right, so suppose I want to reach this particular S block, and I know S block contains this particular three sets of sub blocks. All right, where this will occupy 2 bytes, this will occupy 25 bytes, this will occupy 4 bytes according to the data type which I have declared in my structure. All right, so S is of info type, and internal pointer means we have not specifically externally declared a pointer here, but whatever the internal operations, now you will understand it better when I'll tell you how we access the elements and how we retrieve the elements. All right, so in that case, if you say like 2000 is basically the base address, which means you can think in this way. Suppose I want to access this particular user defined data type, all right, which has the name S, and suppose if I know the base address, मान लो कि like it is very easy if you talk of the concept purpose point of view. All right, you want to reach these blocks and you in turn know that this block contains these three sub blocks. All right, so if I have the memory location or the base address of this particular block, all right, which means if I reach this particular block, in turn where will I reach? I'll reach inside this particular super block. Just for a concept purpose point of view, I'm saying. All right, so like it works as an internal pointer, which means in S whatever you store, all right, S is basically denoting these three sub blocks together in case of structure type. All right, but whatever the basically internal operations going on, that is going on with the help of internal pointer concept. And if you do not know pointer, I do request you first watch that in my playlist, what are the concepts there, and you can directly jump on a sync on after that. All right, so S will in turn store the base address here and it will point to this location. All right, so this is how the memory is allocated. This is the actual picture of how memory is allocated. All right, in case of structures in C. All right, and so do just note this part, and now we'll see how we can put values in this particular, or how we can retrieve the values as well. All right, so in case of putting values, we can put it individually also, or at the time of declaration also. Like this is just the part of initialization, means we have just created a data type and we have allocated basically memory space, but we have not put values or declared values in our basically sub boxes. So how can we do that? All right, so that will be the next part. So you do note this by pausing the video, and I'll continue on. Well, I'll keep this part, all right, just because there is no point of writing it. Well, all right, so you know like how the memory has been allocated. So now how we can put values or how we can retrieve values basically. So we know that I have this thing. All right, so and let's assume the base address is 2000 again. I have S here. S contains 2000. S is pointing to the base address, which means S is pointing to this, like info type. Info type means structure. All right, since we have declared the name info. So now suppose I want to put something inside this box. So how can I put basically? So here we use the dot operator. All right, we use the dot operator here, which means suppose after I have written this part and now I want to put some integer value inside a marks. So how can I do that? First of all, what I need to do, I need to write the parent name. All right, whatever the info type, this is the type, and whatever name I have provided, what is the name I have provided? That is S. All right. So you do not get confused with this part. Consider it to be separate. All right. So if you have problem here, I'll write it here. All right, just consider it to be just for a concept point of view, like how is it working. All right, fine. So with the dot operator, fine. So what do we need to write? S dot marks. And suppose I want to like store 12. So when I write this, basically what happens internally, like whatever the operations you do not need to consider, what basically happens is that 12 gets stored in this memory location with the base address of 2000. All right, now you know character array, which means it can also denote string. All right, so if you write s dot name, let's say Mohit. So what this name will store, basically name will store Mohit. All right, why am I not writing Mohit here? All right, in this particular box. So in my next video, which is the part 4 video, all right, I'll explain you what basically happens when we declare a character or an array, basically any kind of array. It could be an integer array also, float array also. What happens when we declare a array inside a structured type data type? Basically, suppose info type, whenever I declare within this structured block an array, so how the thing works out here, I'll explain in my further videos. For now instance, you think that Mohit is stored here. All right, not exactly here, but basically if I like retrieve, like if I write s dot name, so basically name denotes this particular box, so basically name will store Mohit. All right, so an average, like suppose any kind of, since the data type is float, so any kind of floating value, suppose 75.21. all right, so in case 75.21 basically gets stored here. So what is this basically? Like what you have done is you have declared everything like single-handedly. all right, like इसको आपने अलग से लिखा है, इसको आपने अलग से लिखा है, इसको आपने अलग से लिखा है. अब मान लो कि इधर 10 होते तो आपको 10 अलग अलग तरीके से लिखना पड़ता. ठीक है, सो ये थोड़ा सा लाइक ओल्ड कन्वेंशनल टाइप होगा, थोड़ा अच्छा नहीं लगता है. सो हाउ वी कैन कोप अप विद दैट? ऑल राइट, सो क्या हम लोग एक ही बार में सब कुछ डिक्लेयर कर सकते हैं? ऑफकोर्स वी कैन डू. सो हाउ वी डू बेसिकली, सो ये बेसिकली आपका इंसर्शन ऑफ वैल्यूज़ हो गया. रिट्रीव कैसे करते हैं? सो व्हेन डू वी नीड टू रिट्रीव वैल्यूज़? सपोज मान लो कि मेरे को ये वाला वैल्यू जो भी है, ठीक है, ये प्रिंट करवाना है, तो उस टाइम में भी प्रिंट करवाना है, मतलब प्रिंट एफ स्टेटमेंट में आएगा, उस टाइम में भी हम लोग यही सिंटैक्स फॉलो करके, ठीक है, हम लोग रिट्रीव कर पाएंगे. ऑल राइट, सो डू रिमेंबर दिस पार्ट. एंड वन मोर थिंग, आप बेसिकली यहाँ पर अभी समझ पा रहे हो कि क्यों हम लोग स्ट्रक्चर या फिर इन्फो टाइप या फिर यूज़र डिफाइंड डेटा टाइप इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. मान लो कि ये मार्क्स, नेम, एवरेज जो भी है, ये किसी एक स्टूडेंट का डिटेल्स है. ठीक है, मान लो कि स्टूडेंट का नेम यहाँ पर है S या फिर S1 मान लो. ऐसे कोई दूसरा स्टूडेंट होगा, मान लो कि S2. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पर जैसे मैंने S1 कर दिया मान लो, तो स्टूडेंट 1 का मार्क्स, नेम और एवरेज का डिटेल्स एक पर्टिकुलर ब्लॉक में रहा, जिसको मैं कैसे एक्सेस कर सकता हूँ? S1.marks, S1.name, S1.avg. all right, suppose I have a second student with the name S2. So for that also I will create such kind of user defined block basically, which will again store chunks, marks, name and average. All right, so if you talk of the previous concept which I had told in my previous video, like these boxes were basically discrete. All right, this is not discrete, this is basically, you can say, contiguous. All right, contiguous means there is no like suppose 2000, then 2003, then 2017. all right, so these are basically in one linear manner, you can say. There is no such, suppose this is 2000, then this will be 5000, then this will be 7046. So there is no like discrete parts, all right, or discrete base address is given to each of this. So it is kind of a contiguous form of thing, you can say. All right, so now you can analyze or understand why we need structure. All right, suppose I have 50 students, so I need to store the marks, name and average of 50 students. So how can I do basically? All right, so suppose for student 1 I need to store this, so I have this structure defined data type already. I'll just declare the variable, my memory will get allocated, and then I can put the values or retrieve the values in this fashion. So what will be in turn my output, basically the details of that particular student can be accessed from this s block basically, या फिर s वेरिएबल के थ्रू हम लोग बेसिकली एक्सेस कर पाएंगे. ठीक है, किसका डिटेल्स, वो भी स्टूडेंट का जो भी डिटेल्स होगा. सो दिस इज वाई, दिस इज जस्ट अ लाइक एग्जांपल ऑफ हाउ वी यूज स्ट्रक्चर्स इन आवर प्रोग्राम और वाई वी यूज स्ट्रक्चर्स. ठीक है, तो अभी ये तो वैल्यूज़ डल गया. अभी आपको दिखाते कि एक बार में कैसे वैल्यूज़ डाल सकते हैं, क्योंकि अगर मान लो यहाँ पर 15 ऐसे आप डेटा टाइप डिक्लेयर कर रहे थे, तो क्या आपको वैसे ही डिक्लेयर करना है? नहीं, बिल्कुल भी नहीं, क्योंकि वो एक हेक्टिक तरीका हो जाएगा. आपको 15 लाइन लिखना पड़ेगा अपने कोड में. सो दैट इज़ नॉट द एफिशिएंट वे बेसिकली. सो आप इसको नोट करो. मैं अभी आपको दिखाता हूँ कि हाउ कैन वी इंसर्ट एवरीथिंग टुगेदर, एंड वील ऑल्सो सी हाउ कैन वी रिट्रीव द वैल्यूज. बेसिकली सेम सिंटैक्स फॉलो होगा. दिस इज जस्ट द सिंटैक्स फॉर इंसर्टिंग द वैल्यूज. ऑल राइट, सो यप, नोट दिस. सो पूरा ही मिटाते हैं, वापस से लिख लेंगे ना, प्रॉब्लम है क्या है. तो कर लेते हैं, दो ही मिनट का तो काम, लिखना है बस. फाइन, तो इसको हटा देता हूँ अभी के लिए. तो अभी मान लो ये चीज़ डिक्लेयर किया है. सपोज आई हैव डिक्लेयर्ड इट लाइक दिस, सिर्फ ये सेगमेंट लिखा है. ठीक है, अभी इसके बाद मैं दोबारा लिख रहा हूँ struct info s. All right, so I have created struct info s, which means I have created a variable of type info type. All right, info type means structure. I have defined it with the help of structure here. All right, s is the variable. All right, so basically this, you can consider this to be a parent super block which is defined by the type s. ठीक है, तो अभी एक चीज़ आपको यहाँ पर बहुत ही अच्छे तरीके से ध्यान में रखना है. आप इसको सुनिए. ठीक है, सो इनिशियली व्हाट आई हैव गिवन, आई हैव रिटन मार्क्स, नेम एंड एवरेज. सो दिस इज द ऑर्डर ऑफ माई टाइप विच आई हैव डिक्लेयर्ड. ठीक है, मान लो कि ये फ्लोट इस यहाँ आ जाता और कैरेक्टर जो भी है ये नीचे आ जाता. सो बेसिकली मार्क्स के बाद 2 बाइट्स होने के बाद फ्लोट टाइप का जो भी बॉक्स है वो इधर आता, विच मीन्स 2 बाइट्स एंड 4 बाइट्स विल बी एलोकेटेड. आफ्टर दैट कैरेक्टर वाला ब्लॉक जो भी यहाँ आता उसके लिए मेमोरी स्पेस असाइन होता है बेसिकली. तो जिस ऑर्डर में आप यहाँ पर डिक्लेयर कर रहे हो उसी ऑर्डर में, रिमेंबरिंग द डेटा टाइप of whatever you have provided of the individual blocks here, you need to declare the value also. All right, so suppose integer marks, which means 10, character name, we generally denote string or sequence of characters within double quotes. All right, that's why I have written average, floating point value. So if you declare in this way also, internally what happens, 10 gets stored here, Rahul gets stored here, 76.12 gets stored here. All right, now suppose if you declare this, all right, without writing those steps that I have shown you, all right, this thing also will in turn produce the same output. Now suppose let's assume यहाँ पर क्या कर देता मैं, suppose I had written this, all right, it would show me error. Why? Because the way I have declared these subblocks, all right, in my structured data type, all right, in my user defined data type, according to that, marks, which means integer, should come, then character, array or a string should come, then the floating point value memory is basically allocated. All right, so initially when I declare like this, all right, what happens basically, the first block, all right, 10 will get stored here. All right, let's remove this part, let's remove this. All right, so initially 10 will be stored here. Now when 76.12 will be going to be stored in this box, but in my order, this is the variable name, and what is the type? Basically character type, or a character array basically. Fine. So this can only store sequence of characters, and whatever the second value you have declared, that is not a character basically, that is what, that is a floating point value. So that's why it will basically show you error. So do remember the way or the in order you have declared your individual data types and variables. All right, in order of that, keeping the data type, you should declare, if you want to declare in one go, you should note this order and then declare whatever the values you want to put. All right, so keep this thing in mind. Generally people do make mistakes here. All right, and so like now we'll see how we can access the elements. All right, suppose मान लो कि मेरे यहाँ पर अभी जैसे राहुल है, ठीक है, या फिर 5.13 कुछ भी है, ठीक है. सो हाउ कैन आई रिट्रीव द वैल्यूज, क्योंकि हम लोग वैल्यू स्टोर क्यों करते हैं, ताकि फ्यूचर में रिट्रीव कर पाए हम लोग, तो वो देखते हैं. ठीक है, नोट कर लो इसको. इसको मिटा देते हैं, जो भी अपना करेक्ट सिंटैक्स है वो लिख देते हैं. जस्ट सेकेंड. Name, average, I'm not writing, you know it will be denoted by S. All right, so suppose after this you continue your program. All right, I'm continuing from here, and you suppose write printf %d s dot marks. Fine. So if you write this statement, basically it's a print statement. So similarly with the dot operator we can access also. So s dot marks means the value stored inside marks, which is 10. So whatever the output of this particular thing, all right, the output will be 10. Similarly, if I write s dot name, the output will be Rahul. All right, so this is how we can even access the values. All right, whenever we want to print it or do some any kind of manipulations. All right, suppose I want to add these two numbers. All right, suppose let's say I have declared something float b. So this is not in sync up with this data, this is in another location. All right, so if I do plus s dot avg, and suppose I print this thing, all right, suppose I print b. So what will happen basically, always the right side gets executed first whenever we have this assignment operator. So in right side, s dot marks means 10, s dot avg means 5, so basically it will be 15.13, and it will in turn get stored in the variable b. All right, and whenever we print b, so basically the output will be my 15.13. So by this, like, you can retrieve the values, you can do any kind of operations, you can either print it, you can do some whatever according to use case you can do basically. So this is much for this video. All right, so in this video we have seen how we can basically the memory is allocated for structures for different kinds of like sub blocks inside one parent super block. All right, which is denoted by S, which means S is of info type, which we have declared, user defined data type basically. All right, so what is the need basically, you know, suppose I have 10 students and I do need to store the record of individual students denoting marks, name and average. So in that case structure becomes important or useful. We also like discuss how we can retrieve the values, put the values in one go as well as individually, and how we can retrieve the values and do kinds of manipulations or with the output whatever we want. So that's it, this much for this video. If you do like the video, if you have any kind of query or any kind of like आपको कोई सा भी समझने में दिक्कत आया हो आज, ठीक है, so you can do post it in the comment section below. I will be more than happy to clear it out. और सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो कर दो फटाक से, ठीक है, बेल आइकन दबाना मत भूलना, और शेयर करो कंटेंट को ऑलराइट विद एनी काइंड ऑफ टेक फ्रीक गाइस जो कि इस कॉन्सेप्ट में और भी डीप डाइव करना चाहते हैं. सो डू शेयर द कंटेंट. सो थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर वॉचिंग, थैंक यू फॉर द पेशेंस. वील सी यू इन द अपकमिंग वीडियोज़.